Brite, 2017. A fantasy cop with Will Smith and orcs? Sounds cool, right? Well, it's not. Brite had a $90 million budget and was Netflix's first big blockbuster attempt. The concept had potential, but critics slammed the movie for its clunky dialogue,
Oh shit, man, I thought you were dead.
messy world building, and awkward racial metaphors. It held a dismal 27% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences tuned in, mostly out of curiosity. Netflix greenlit a sequel, but it quietly disappeared. Well, maybe because of that? Death Note, 2017. Netflix adaptation of the beloved anime Death Note was met with immediate backlash, and for good reason. Fans were outraged by the drastic changes to character personalities, especially the lead, Light Turner, whose motivations felt shallow compared to the original's morally complex anti-hero.
Shall we begin?
The film's westernized setting, questionable casting choices, and rushed pacing stripped away the psychological intensity that made the anime iconic. It holds a 36% on Rotten Tomatoes and still seen as a prime example of how not to adapt anime. Cloverfield Paradox, 2018. What happens when you drop a surprise sci-fi thriller during the Super Bowl? Apparently, disappointment. The Cloverfield Paradox was hyped as a part of the Cloverfield universe, but it turned out to be a confused mess. Critics called it incoherent, generic, and downright boring.
What the hell?
Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 22%. It didn't help that the plot barely made sense and it felt like two movies was stitched together. Did it make money? Technically, yes. Netflix bought it from Paramount for $50 million, sparing Paramount a theatrical flop. Thunderforce, 2021. Melissa McCartney and Octavia Spencer in a superhero comedy? Sounds like it could work, right? But Thunderforce was a misfire from start to finish.
Calamari! This robbery is being stopped by Thunderforce!
The jokes fell flat, the pacing dragged, and the action felt like it came from a budget YouTube skit. It scored just 22% on Rotten Tomatoes and got dunked on social media. Financially, the film had a mid-sized budget, estimated around $70 million. In other words, Netflix paid big for a movie that nobody remembered. The Last Days of American Crime, 2020. This movie made history, but not in a good way. The Last Days of American Crime is one of the few Netflix films to get a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. 0. Based on a graphic novel, the film was supposed to be a gritty crime thriller.
Motherfucker's back.
Instead, it was called incoherent, bloated, and painfully dull. It was also released during the height of the George Floyd protests, making its violent cop-focused plot extremely deaf. Red Notice, 2021. Yes, with The Rock, Gal Gadot, and Ryan Reynolds, remember? While it was Netflix's most watched movie at one point, critics were not impressed. Despite its $200 million budget, Netflix's most expensive at that time, Red Notice was called soulless, formulaic, and hollow. A shiny movie with nothing underneath. For Netflix, it was a lesson in big stars don't equal big success.
Oh, what the
Persuasion, 2022. Netflix's attempt to modernize Jane Austen's Persuasion ended in disaster. Starring lead Dakota Johnson, this period piece was meant to be witty and fresh. Instead, it came off like a bad Fleabag knockoff. Breaking the fourth wall, Gen Z-style slang, and flat performances turned Austen fans and critics away.
I want to be a captain.
Absolutely not.
Rotten Tomatoes, just 30%. It alienated the very audience that would have championed it. Blonde, 2022. Marilyn Monroe deserved better. Blonde, starring Ana de Armas, promised a haunting biopic. What viewers got instead was a disturbing, exploitative, and nearly 3-hour-long misery fest. Critics tore into it for reducing Monroe to a tragic stereotype.
I can't face doing another scene with Marilyn Monroe.
Audiences found it emotionally draining, with graphic scenes that felt more shocking than meaningful. Despite the Oscar buzz, the reception was brutal. It sits at 42% on Rotten Tomatoes. The Gray Man, 2022. Imagine Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, directed by the Russo brothers, and a $200 million budget. It was Netflix's attempt to start a spy franchise. But the story? Generic. The action? Unmemorable. The villain? Cartoonish.
Lloyd Hansen, Hansen Government Services.
Rings a bell.
Oh, does it?
No offense, Chris. I'm a huge fan. Critics called it style over substance, and audiences agreed. Netflix is still pushing for a sequel, but it's clear that the first film didn't land the way they hoped. Heart of Stone, 2023. Heart of Stone had all the ingredients for success. Gal Gadot as a secret agent, globe-trotting action, and a plot about AI espionage. But instead of being a fresh take on the spy genre, it came off like a copy-paste of every action movie you've already seen. Critics panned the film for its wooden dialogue,
Chance of success just plummeted.
Only because you've got no imagination.
shallow characters, and predictable twists. The action scenes, while flashy, lacked stakes. And the villain was a forgettable tech cliche. Pain Hustlers, 2023, starring Emily Blunt and again, Chris Evans. Pain Hustlers had a promising setup, a dramatization of the opioid epidemic through a fictional pharmaceutical startup. But what could have been a gripping exploration of corruption turned into a glossy, confused narrative that couldn't decide if it was satire, drama, or crime thriller. While failing to unpack the human cause of addiction, the character arcs felt superficial, the pacing dragged, and the moral takeaway practically non-existent. The Electric State, 2025. Again, with the Russo brothers directing and a $320 million budget, The Electric State was positioned as Netflix's next sci-fi masterpiece, starring Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt. I can see a little trend here. The movie had everything except a good script. Critics slammed it for being visually overpolished but emotionally flat. The world building was ambitious but poorly explained, and many viewers felt the film prioritized spectacle over substance. Whereas, the emotional beats, especially the bond between the girl and her robot companion, felt forced and underdeveloped. With a 14% Rotten Tomatoes score, it was proven that even blockbuster names can salvage a weak storytelling.
Wolverines!
Please, you were sucking your thumb and begging me to save your ass.
It got potential though. That's 6 minutes. Thank you for watching. Like the video and don't forget to subscribe for more flops.